The 3:10 bell at Maple Hollow Elementary released a flood of small bodies into the cold, and Daniel Harper stood at the chain-link fence where he always stood, hands buried in the pockets of his canvas work jacket, watching for the red coat. Emma came out near the end of the rush, her glasses fogged from the sudden temperature change, her backpack listing to one side because she never zipped it fully. She was 7 years old, and walked the way her father walked, deliberate, chin slightly down, like someone thinking through a problem. She spotted him through the steam of her own breath and raised one mittened hand. "You're early," she said when she reached him. "I'm exactly on time. Last Tuesday you were 2 minutes late and I stood in the wind." He took her backpack without asking. "I remember. You told me 4 times. They walked the 6 blocks to Pine Street in the kind of comfortable quiet that takes years to build. The afternoon light in early December died fast in Maple Hollow. Vermont, the town folded into shadow by 4 o'clock, and the street lamps came on orange and reluctant. The house they rented was a 2-bedroom Cape Cod with a sagging gutter on the east side that Daniel kept meaning to fix, and a front door that swelled in the cold and required a shoulder lean to open. Inside, it was warm. That was the main thing. Daniel had learned to prioritize warmth. He put water on for pasta, and Emma settled at the kitchen table with her reading log, her feet not quite reaching the floor. On the hook, behind the back door, hung a wool coat dark green, women's medium, with a small repair on the left cuff where the stitching had come loose. Hannah's coat. He'd fixed the cuff himself the previous winter, 3 months after the funeral, because it seemed wrong to let things fall apart. "Dad." Marcus said his mom makes real sauce, not from a jar. Daniel stirred the pasta. "Marcus's mom has a different schedule than me." Emma considered this. "What's your schedule?" "Tonight, I sleep. Then tonight I work." She wrote something in her log. "You work when it's dark. Someone has to." That was true in the most literal sense. Daniel worked the overnight security rotation at the Maple Hollow Commerce Center, a squat collection of office suites and a distribution hub on the edge of town. 8 hours, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. It paid $22.40 an hour, which was enough for rent, heat, groceries, and not much else. He'd taken the shift because it aligned with Emma's school hours and because Carol Briggs next door had agreed to sleep in whenever needed, a retired school librarian who charged nothing and asked only that Emma not touch the cat. After dinner, Daniel read to Emma from the book they were working through, together a story about a lighthouse keeper on a fictional island who had to navigate by the stars when his light went dark. He did voices. The lighthouse keeper had a gravelly New England accent. The visiting inspector was pompous and slightly nasal. Emma laughed at the inspector every time. When he tucked her in, she looked at the ceiling for a moment in the way she did when she was deciding whether to ask something. "Dad, do people come back after they die?" He sat on the edge of her bed. Outside, a plow was working on the main road. "What's making you think about that?" "Olivia's grandma died, and Olivia said her grandma visited her in a dream. Maybe that happens for some people." "Did Mom visit you?" He was quiet for a count of 4. "She visits me when I hear you laugh, because you laugh the same way." Emma processed this with great seriousness. He kissed her forehead and left the door open 3 inches, the way she liked it. He was asleep by 7:30. At 6:42 on a Thursday morning, 2 weeks into December, Daniel came home to find someone standing on his porch. His first reaction was practical. He clocked the car first. A black SUV that cost more than 2 years of his salary, parked at the curb with the engine running. Then the woman herself, tall, late 30s, in a pale cashmere coat that had no business being worn in Vermont weather. Dark hair pulled back. She was holding a coffee cup from the gas station on Route 9, which struck him as inconsistent with everything else about her. She turned when she heard the creak of the porch step. "Mr. Harper." Her voice was even. Not warm, not cold, controlled in the way of someone who had learned to manage every variable. My name is Claire Jennings. I work with the Hartfield Children's Medical Fund. He stopped at the bottom of the steps. About Emma. We've been reviewing cases of children who may qualify for supplemental support vision care, specialist consultations. Emma's name came up through the school district's resource office. He looked at her. The gray eyes. The particular stillness of someone who had rehearsed what she was going to say many times and was now monitoring her own performance. How did you know where I live? The resource office provided the address. With parent consent forms already on file, he came up the steps, put his key in the door. I'll need to look into that. Leave your card. She produced one immediately heavy stock, embossed, and he took it without looking at it. He went inside. He stood in the kitchen, still in his coat, and looked at the card. Claire Jennings, Hartfield Children's Medical Fund, Burlington, VT. He did not know why his hands felt slightly unsteady. He looked up the fund on his phone during Emma's school day and found nothing that concerned him. A legitimate non-profit, registered, with a board of directors and a 4-star charity rating. He looked up Claire Jennings and found a LinkedIn with a professional headshot that could have been anyone. He called the fund's main number. The woman who answered confirmed that a Claire Jennings worked in their outreach division. He put the phone down and went to sleep. But at 2 a.m, lying awake between shifts, he did something he didn't fully understand the impulse, for he searched for Whitmore Industries out of Burlington because the card's area code had nagged at him. The company came up immediately. A mid-sized holding firm with interests in commercial real estate and pharmaceutical distribution, founded by Charles Whitmore, currently chaired by his daughter. The daughter's name was Victoria Whitmore. He clicked on the image. The photograph was professional, corporate, the kind taken by someone who charges by the hour. She was wearing a dark blazer, her hair down, and her expression was composed in the specific way of someone who is accustomed to being photographed. But it was the eyes that stopped him gray, with a particular quality of focus, and set at an angle that he had seen every morning for 7 years when he slid a pair of glasses onto a small face. He closed the browser. He lay in the dark for a while. Then he opened his filing cabinet and found the folder he kept in the back, behind the tax documents and the car insurance, the folder from the Burlington Family Services Agency, dated 7 years and 4 months ago. Hannah had come to him with Emma when Emma was 4 months old, already adopted, already his daughter in every way that mattered. The paperwork was thorough. The biological mother had signed voluntarily. All fees had been covered by an unnamed foundation. He found the routing information for the fee coverage. A firm called WH Philanthropic Holdings. He did not sleep again that night. She had rented the Callaway house. He found this out not through any investigation, but because Maple Hollow was small enough that such information traveled without effort. Carol Briggs mentioned it while watching Emma one afternoon, the way Carol mentioned everything, as part of an ongoing narration of neighborhood activity. Young woman from out of town. Burlington plates. Quiet. Paid 3 months up front. The Callaway house was 4 blocks from Pine Street. He saw her for the first time since the porch encounter at Grafton's Market on a Saturday. She was in the produce section, holding an apple with the focused attention of someone who was not actually thinking about the apple. Emma was beside him in the cart and said, loudly and without preamble, "That lady has eyes like mine." The woman, Claire, Victoria, whoever she was, went very still. Daniel put his hand on Emma's shoulder. "Lots of people have gray eyes, Bug." "No," Emma said, with the confidence of a child who knows what she knows. "That kind of gray, like the lake in October when it gets cloudy." The woman turned slowly, as if she had been hoping the moment would pass. She looked at Emma with an expression that she did not have time to fully assemble something raw, something that flickered across her face and was gone in under a second, replaced by the controlled composure he had seen on the porch. But he caught it. The flicker. "Hello," she said to Emma. Her voice was careful. "What's your name?" "Emma Harper." "I'm 7. How old are you?" A fraction of something, nearly a smile. 38. That's old, Emma said, not unkindly. My dad is 35. Daniel steered the cart forward. Nice to run into you, Miss Jennings. She watched them go. He felt it on the back of his neck. Margaret Sloane arrived on a Wednesday in the second week of December, unannounced, in a sedan with Vermont legal plates and a briefcase that she carried with both hands. She was in her 50s, efficient-looking, with the kind of face that gave away nothing and required nothing in return. She showed him a business card. Sloane and Devereaux, Family Law, Burlington. I'm here on behalf of a client who has a legal interest in the welfare of the minor child, Emma Harper, she said, at his kitchen table, with the same dispassionate precision of someone reading a clause from a contract. My client is seeking a formal assessment of care arrangements. Daniel's hands were flat on the table. Who is your client? I'm not at liberty to say at this stage. I can tell you the assessment is preliminary and does not constitute a petition at this time. What does preliminary mean? It means we're gathering information. Income documentation, child care arrangements, medical insurance coverage, school records. She opened the briefcase. I've also noted that Emma's vision prescription is listed as last updated 18 months ago. The recommended interval for a child her age is 12 months. Daniel said nothing. I'm not here to be adversarial, Mr. Harper. I'm here to understand the situation. He looked at the briefcase, at the legal pad she had placed on his table, at the line she had drawn across the top with Emma's full name and date of birth. You understand, he said, slowly, that you came to my house without an appointment, without telling me who you represent, and you're now sitting at my table, talking about my daughter's glasses. I understand this feels abrupt. I'd like you to leave. She gathered her things without urgency. If a formal petition is filed, you'll want to have counsel. I'd suggest getting ahead of that. He watched her car pull away from the curb. He stood in the kitchen for a long time after, in the quiet house, with the afternoon light falling across the table where she'd put the legal pad. Emma's name in someone else's handwriting. He called the school and scheduled an eye appointment for the following Monday. Then he drove to the Calloway house. He'd been wrong about the timing. He'd assumed there would be a process, a warning, a formal notification, time to understand what he was dealing with. What he hadn't anticipated was the garage. He'd been clearing boxes that weekend, the practical kind of pre-winter sorting that he did every year, consolidating, discarding, and in the back of a plastic storage bin, he found a shoebox that had been Hannah's. Inside, a small collection of photographs, a folded hospital bracelet, 2 birthday cards, and an envelope from the Burlington Family Services Agency that he had never opened because it had arrived addressed to Hannah 3 weeks after she died, and he had been operating on fumes. And he had put it in the box, meaning to deal with it, and then forgotten. He sat down on a folding chair in the cold garage and opened it. It was a letter from the agency confirming that the biological mother of the child, placed for adoption 4 years and 7 months prior, had waived all parental rights permanently and unconditionally. The letter was a formality, a paper trail item, but attached to it was a processing notation that referenced the fee waiver, and the waiver was traced to WH Philanthropic Holdings, registered to a Burlington address, listed under the directorship of one V.C. Whitmore. He held the paper and breathed through his nose. The sequence assembled itself in his mind with a cold clarity. She had signed the papers, then paid the agency fees anonymously, then stayed away for 7 years, and then she had come to Maple Hollow and rented a house 4 blocks from his daughter and introduced herself with a fake name while a lawyer prepared an assessment. He was not a man who frightened easily, but he was a father, and those were 2 very different things. He knocked on the door of the Calloway house at 8:30 that evening, after Carol Briggs had come to sit with Emma, without explaining where he was going. Victoria Whitmore answered the door in a sweater and bare feet, a glass of water in her hand, and the expression on her face when she saw him told him everything he needed to confirm. She had known this was coming. She had been waiting for it. Mr. Harper, you want to tell me who Claire Jennings is? She stepped back from the door. He came in. The house was sparsely furnished. She hadn't put much of herself into it. Or perhaps she hadn't had time. Or perhaps she hadn't been sure she was staying. There was a laptop open on the kitchen table and a stack of documents beside it. He could see legal letterhead from across the room. "My father filed for a temporary guardianship review," she said. She did not sit down. "I didn't ask him to, but you didn't stop it." She was quiet for a beat. "No, not immediately." "Why not?" She set the glass down on the counter. "Because I've thought about Emma for 7 years, and when I found out about Hannah, I needed to know she was safe. I needed to see her." She stopped, started again. "My father thought a legal review was the appropriate tool. He thinks everything is an appropriate tool. A legal review that could take my daughter. That was never my intention." "What was your intention?" "You came here with a fake name and a fake job and stood on my porch." She looked at him directly, those gray eyes, the same shade as the ones he'd been looking at for 7 years. And he felt something shift in him, the specific discomfort of a thing you knew intellectually becoming a thing you felt. "I didn't know how to say who I was," she said. "I don't have a word for what I am to her. I gave her up. I don't have a claim." "No," he said. "You don't." Silence. "My father's petition has no merit," she said. "I'll tell Margaret Sloan to stand down. You have documentation. You have a school record. You have 7 years of care. No judge is going to remove Emma from your home. Are you certain?" "No. But I'm certain enough to go on record against my own father if it comes to that." He studied her. She met the study without flinching. "Why are you still here?" he asked. "In Maple Hollow." She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was quieter. "I wanted to see her laugh, just once. From a distance, that's all I came for." A pause. "Then I heard her in the grocery store, talking about the lake in October, and I couldn't leave." He picked up his coat from where he'd set it on the arm of the chair. "I'm going to talk to a family lawyer tomorrow," he said. "If there's a petition, I'll respond to it. If there isn't, then I think we need to discuss what your presence here means, carefully, and with lawyers, and with Emma's well-being as the only consideration." "I agree." He opened the door. Snow was falling again, fine and steady. "She's healthy," he said, with his back to the room. "She's happy. She has 3 kids, she considers her best friends, and she's reading 2 grade levels ahead, and she does voices when she reads to herself. I can hear her through the door." He left without looking back. Charles Whitmore's petition was filed on December 22nd, 2 days before Christmas, and Daniel found out from his own lawyer, a legal aid attorney named Patricia Owens, who worked out of a converted Victorian on the main street of Burlington and wore sensible shoes and took notes in a very small hand. "He's arguing insufficient resources," Patricia told him at her desk, with the file open between them. "Single-parent household, shift work, below median household income, no biological tie to the child. Can he do that? He can file. Filing isn't winning." She tapped the page. "The bar for removing a child from a stable home is very high in Vermont. You've had Emma for 7 years. Her school records are clean. Her pediatric records are clean. You have testimony from her teacher, her pediatrician, and her neighbor. Charles Whitmore is a 71-year-old man with a corporate attorney and a grudge. And the grudge is against his daughter, not you." The hearing was on a Thursday in January, in a courtroom that smelled of radiator heat and old wood. Charles Whitmore sat at the petitioner's table with his attorney, a broad-shouldered man named Gerald Frost, who had argued before the Vermont Supreme Court twice. He did not look at Daniel. He looked at the judge with the focused attention of a man accustomed to having rooms bend to his will. Daniel sat at the respondent's table with Patricia Owens in the suit he'd worn to Hannah's funeral, and then not again until now. He had a folder. In the folder were Emma's school attendance records, her report cards, her pediatric visit summaries, a letter from her teacher describing Emma's reading level, her classroom participation, her friendship group. Evidence of a life. Frost's argument was polished. He framed it as concern, a grandfather's genuine alarm at an unstable situation, a child deserving more resources and more security, a single working parent stretched thin. He made Daniel's night shift sound like abandonment. He made $22.40 an hour sound like poverty. He made the green coat on the back door sound like a household still too broken to serve a child. Patricia Owens was not polished. She was precise. She walked the judge through 7 years of documented care, line by line, with the methodical patience of someone who had done this before and understood that the work was in the details. She submitted the pediatric records, the school attendance logs, Carol Briggs's written statement. Then she said, "Your Honor, we'd like to call Victoria Whitmore." Frost objected. The judge overruled. Victoria came from the gallery. She had not told Daniel she was coming. She had not told her father. She sat in the witness chair in a dark gray blazer and answered Patricia's questions without looking at the petitioner's table. "Miss Whitmore, you are the biological mother of the child in question." "Yes." "You voluntarily relinquished parental rights 7 years ago." "Yes." "And you have had the opportunity to observe the care provided by the respondent, Daniel Harper, in recent weeks." "Yes." "What is your assessment of that care?" Victoria looked at her hands for a moment. Then she looked at the judge. "Emma is secure. She's curious and she's funny, and she argues about everything, and she knows exactly when her father is dodging a question. She has a home. She has stability." Her voice did not waver. "Daniel Harper is her father. He has been her father for every day of her life that matters. My father's petition is not about Emma. It's about me, and it's about control, and I'd ask the court to see it for what it is." Charles Whitmore's lawyer was on his feet, but the judge had already seen enough. The petition was denied. Costs were awarded to the respondent. In the hallway afterward, Charles Whitmore walked past Daniel without acknowledgement. He paused at his daughter. Whatever passed between them in the 3 seconds they stood facing each other, Daniel could not hear. Victoria's expression did not change. Charles walked on. Patricia Owens shook Daniel's hand and then went to find her parking validation. He and Victoria stood in the courthouse hallway while January light came through the high windows, thin and cold. "Thank you," he said. "I should have stopped it sooner." "You did stop it." She looked at the door her father had walked through. "He won't try again. He doesn't like losing, but he really doesn't like public record." Daniel put the folder under his arm. "Emma has an eye appointment on the 14th. Victoria nodded slowly. "How are her eyes?" "Better with glasses than without. Same as most people." He walked toward the exit. Then he stopped. "She talks about the grocery store," he said. "About meeting a woman with lake gray eyes. She's brought it up 4 times. He left it there and went to get his car. He did not contact her. She did not contact him. The Calloway house still had Burlington plates in the driveway, which he registered without comment each time he drove past, which was not often and not on purpose. February came in cold and stayed cold. Emma's eye appointment revealed that her prescription had shifted slightly correctable, straightforward, the kind of thing that cost $340 with new frames. Daniel moved the February grocery budget and didn't mention it to anyone. The next week, an envelope arrived in his mailbox from Hartfield Children's Medical Fund, Burlington. Inside was a check made out to Pine Street Optical for $340, with a note typed on plain paper. "This is not charity. It's a category called responsibility. You can refuse it, but it will be here regardless, a fund in Emma's name, renewed annually, for medical and educational costs that arise. No strings, no contact unless you initiate, no legal instrument of any kind. Just money going where it should go." He held the check for a long time. He thought about tearing it up. He thought about it carefully, as he thought about most things, weighing what it would mean to refuse it. and what it would mean to accept it, and what either choice taught Emma about the world. Not now, but eventually, when she was old enough to know the story, he went to the optical shop on a Tuesday and handed them the check. He didn't tell Emma where the money had come from. She was 7. There would be time. He sat down that evening and wrote a letter by hand, on paper, which he almost never did, addressed to a post office box in Burlington that he found through the fund's website. It was 4 sentences long. The frames are navy blue. She chose them herself. She looks like she's about to solve something. Thank you. He didn't sign it with anything except a date. The crocuses came up in the 3rd week of March, the way they did every year, pushing through the last of the dirty gray snow along the foundation of the house on Pine Street. Emma noticed them first, as she noticed most things first, because she looked at the ground more than she looked at the horizon. They always know, she said. Know what? When it's time. She had a new project, the one she'd been working on at the kitchen table for the past 2 weeks, a drawing that she kept turning face down when Daniel came near. He respected the privacy of it. She was particular about her work. On a Saturday in late March, she presented it to him at breakfast, sliding it across the table with the solemnity of a formal document. It was drawn in colored pencil, the way she drew everything careful, slightly out of proportion in the way of children who draw what they feel rather than what they see. 3 figures standing on a porch. The middle figure was small, with glasses and a red coat. The figure on the left was tall and thin and had a shield-shaped badge on its chest. The figure on the right had long, dark hair and gray pencil-colored eyes. At the top, in Emma's careful printing, "My family." Daniel sat with it for a moment. "Who's this?" he asked, pointing to the right-hand figure. Emma looked at him steadily. "I think you know." He did not underestimate her. He never had. She was 7, but she was also Hannah's daughter in the way that mattered, direct, clear-eyed, with a nearly uncomfortable talent for naming what adults were trying to navigate around. "I know you talked to her," Emma said. "At night. And I know you got a letter and you wrote one back. How do you know that?" "Because the kitchen smelled like paper and ink and you never handwrite things." He looked at the drawing again. 3 figures on a porch, his daughter's vision of something still forming. "She's not here," he said carefully. "She lives in Burlington. Does she want to be here?" He thought about the courthouse hallway, the way she'd answered every question without looking at her father. The note that had come with the check, no strings, no contact unless you initiate. The restraint of it. The carefulness. "I think she'd like to know you," he said, "if you wanted that. But it's not simple, and it takes time, and we'd have to do it slowly." Emma put her chin in her hand. "I'm patient." "I know you are. Are you patient?" He considered the question. "I'm getting better at it." She slid the drawing back across the table, straightening it. "You should call her." He folded his hands. Outside, through the kitchen window, the maple tree at the edge of the yard was beginning to show the particular reddish blush of buds about to break. The yard was still winter gray, but the tree knew. Like the crocuses. Like Emma, apparently. He thought about the first morning, the porch in December, the white cashmere coat standing in the snow. He'd been tired and wary and had registered her presence the way you register anything out of pattern as a problem to be assessed. He understood now that she had been terrified, that she had driven 4 hours, rented a house, invented a name, bought a gas station coffee, and stood on a stranger's porch because she didn't know how to ask for the only thing she wanted. He thought about what 7 years of distance looked like from the inside. He didn't know. He didn't think he could know, but he thought about Emma's drawing on the table and the 3 figures on the porch, and what it meant that a 7-year-old had already decided something that the 2 adults in her life were still circling. He picked up his phone. He found the number, not the fund, not the law office, the direct cell that Patricia Owens had given him after the hearing, in case anything came up. He had not used it. He looked at it now for a long moment. Then he typed a message. Short. Emma drew a picture. "She'd like you to see it, if you want to come." He put the phone on the table, face down. "Now what?" Emma asked. "Now we wait and see. And if she comes, then we figure out the next thing together." Emma seemed satisfied with this. She pulled the drawing back toward herself and studied it, making a small adjustment to the porch railing with a brown pencil. Outside, the light was doing that specific early spring thing, where it looks thinner than winter light but goes longer, stretching toward the fence and the maple tree and the crocuses that were still small and a little uncertain, pressed up against the weight of the season that was ending. His phone lit up. He turned it over. The reply was 2 words. "On my way." He read it twice. Then he put the phone back down and went to make coffee, real coffee. Not the gas station kind, because it seemed like the appropriate thing to do. Emma hummed something at the kitchen table, working on her drawing, unhurried. The maple tree stood in the yard with its quiet red buds. The crocuses held their ground. He filled the pot and waited.